Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Dychronic, your host here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be talking about my top 5 favorite PvE heavies in Destiny 2. Of course, this video is going to be completely subjective based on my own opinion of my favorite heavies for PvE, but along the way I'll be showing off different pieces of my spreadsheet that I have created for this video, including a full DPS calculation based on the damage of the weapon, the amount of time it takes to reload that weapon, the clip size, the total ammo damage, all of that stuff incorporated into a beautiful spreadsheet, averaged out. It's honestly, it's something I'm very proud of. I'll talk more about that in detail when I get to that near the end of the video. And of course, if you wanted to get access to this spreadsheet near the end of the video, I'll be telling you how you can get access, because it is a fully public spreadsheet for you guys to use to see all the perk recommendations, all the damage reports, and all that stuff. That's just there for you. So what's important when it comes to rating these weapons? First of all, it's going to be DPS. How fast can you actually dish out damage in conjunction with the total ammo damage? Because if you deal a lot of damage really quickly and then you have no ammo, it's not going to be worth very much. And the vice versa is also true. Another criteria is going to be ease of use. How easy is it to reach the optimal amount of DPS for a specific weapon? You know, snipers, you have to be very precise, very accurate where you're hitting. Rockets are going to be a little easier. Heavy machine guns are going to be a little easier. And then lastly, availability, which I don't rate as high in this particular top 5 as I've done in the past, but it's still something that is important. And in case you guys were wondering, all of my DPS tests were done on Kali, the first boss of the Last Wish raid. Firstly, because it's really easy, you know, easy crit spot, spawns off the beginning, you get rally flag and all that stuff. She's also a raid boss, which is an important damage statistic for you guys to know, because the regular fodder enemies are widely different kind of damages. The only issue with it is that Kali has a lot of different resistances and strengths that other bosses don't have. For example, she's very explosive resistant, which is something I've encountered many times, but outside of doing, you know, damage tests against every boss in the game, every enemy in the game, I really don't know what to do. And the last thing I want to mention before we get started with my sponsors on screen now is I have a very important question for you guys. Do you like cute fluffy penguins? Because I was trying to decide between penguins and Arctic foxes for this one, have a nice little winter thing going on into Christmas and all that, but I couldn't really decide. You know, on one hand, penguins remind me that I have 5% off of Astro from the Astro store using my link, and you know, Arctic foxes remind me that I have 10% off and currently 20% off of everything from the Control Freak store right now, and it confuses me which one I actually wanted to use. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with number 5 in this top 5 countdown. It's going to be the exotic shotgun known as Legend of Achra. Specifically, I'm talking about the version with the catalyst. The Legend of Achra is a gun that came out with the base game, is basically one of those super powered shotguns that like penetrates through multiple different enemies, extremely wide shot with like 13 pellets, does incredible amounts of damage, and with its catalyst, it reloads faster, has a lot more shots in a single tube, and just in general is just a better weapon. Honestly, this is going to be one of the easier weapons to use on this list. It also has a pretty impressive DPS of nearly 27,000 damage per second, and a full ammo damage of 355,000. Probably the smallest on the list for the top 5, definitely on the low end, but it is so easy to use because it's a shotgun. It does great DPS, and the full ammo damage is not bad. Outside of that, the biggest downside of this weapon is that it is in fact a shotgun with low range, so you're gonna have to get pretty close to the targets, and if you're using this for DPS against bosses, you're gonna have to get close enough that you're probably gonna get meleeed away. That being said, against Morgith in Last Wish, it works amazing. Moving on to number 4 in this top 5 countdown, we have a couple of weapons that I did not think were going to reach this high. The legendary swords known as Gold Tusk and Death's Razor. Both of these are class-specific swords for the Hunter and the Warlock class, and they absolutely dish out a crazy amount of total ammo damage and still maintain a really good DPS. Both of these do pretty well, around 20,000 and 19,000 DPS, and a 900,000 full ammo damage, coming in at second place for total ammo damage in the entire game, behind only the Anarchy with its crazy wait time. These weapons can deal out a lot of damage, and they can actually do it pretty quickly. Now, what makes these weapons so amazing? First of all, it's going to be the specific set of perks that they have. First of all, you have to have Relentless Strike, allowing you to get a free ammo back every other sword hit in a short amount of time, and then secondly, Whirlwind Blade, allowing you to do increased amount of damage every attack that hits. So you get up to a ×5 Whirlwind, you're almost doing double the damage you're doing before, and it's a lot of damage. Now the obvious downside to this is the fact you're using a sword to do damage against probably a boss or a yellow health named enemy, but if you have things like Well or Rifts down, or anything that can protect you, give you overshields, or if you're just blocking shots with your regular guard attack, there's ways to get around it and still do a lot of damage to the targets you're trying to do damage to. On top of that, there are also alternatives to this weapon. The new sword Night Terror, also some of the old swords like Abide the Return, Striker's Surehand, all of these can get the Relentless Whirlwind combo. They're mostly adaptive frames and they can be used by all the classes. I just didn't do the calculations for every single one of them with the thing that I call Light Plus, which is the Relentless plus Whirlwind damage bonus, which those are way more available than the other ones, which you have to do a Heroic Menagerie to be able to have drop. Moving on to number 3 in this top 5 countdown, the exotic linear fusion rifle known as Sleeper Simulant, specifically the one with the catalyst being better because it makes it so it charges faster, making the DPS better. Now the Sleeper Simulant is a gun that I consider to be vastly underrated by the community because of the fact that it has a little bit lower DPS and total ammo damage than that of number 1 and number 2 on this list. That being said, it is also much easier to use. Landing those headshots are a lot easier with a linear fusion rifle with a red dot scope kind of weapon, and this weapon in general just has a lot of aim assistance on it, whereas other weapons like sniper rifles, even rockets and stuff like these are just going to be a little bit more difficult to hit your targets. On top of the fact that this weapon has a pretty low crit modifier, meaning that body shots are very similar in damage to that of headshots, but even then, it's still a great DPS with the headshots. And if you take a look at these stats with a DPS of 21,000, a full ammo damage of 500,000, both of these pretty much nailed it. They're both highly above average and perform extremely well. Now again, this is with the catalyst, which you actually have to get from, I believe, the Spire of Stars raid, random encounter, random chest, whatever. But once you get it, and once you've completed it, which does take a little bit of time, it shoots and charges faster, which is always good to have, and a weapon that I use all the time that people really need to start using again because it's great. Coming up at number 2 in this top 5 countdown is going to be the exotic sniper rifle known as the Darcy. Now this weapon has been known as literally the #1 DPS weapon in the entire game for almost multiple years in a row. The reason that is because firstly, it's a 140 RPM sniper rifle in the heavy slot, meaning that it shoots the fastest of any sniper rifle archetype, and secondly, it does 4 times crit damage when you have personal assistant active, which is basically just aiming at the target, it highlights in red, and you shoot the head. Now with a DPS of 30,000 and a total ammo damage of 500,000, it has second place for DPS and probably in like the top 7 for total ammo damage. Now with great power comes great responsibility. This weapon fires a little too fast, and with that you're going to start to flick off your target a lot. It is very crucial that you make sure you get your personal assistant before you fire every single time. Now there are targets that are easy to do this with. For example, ogres, their crit hit is a little bit lower on their body. You can basically maintain your personal assistant without ever leaving the target shot, and you can just fire as fast as physically possible. But that being said, you are going to have a lot of shots that will not have the bonus. And of course, I highly recommend you get the catalyst if you want to use this weapon more often because, you know, you do get a stability bonus, which is very important for staying on the target, keeping your personal assistant active, which can be obtained from literally any PvE kill in the game, so you should probably already have it. And finally, coming up at number 1 in this top 5 countdown, you guys know what it is, the exotic sniper rifle known as Whisper of the Worm, coming in at literally the #1 DPS weapon out of all the weapons in the game because of the fact that Darcy now has to reload and Whisper does not have to reload if you're landing crit shots. It has a DPS of 38,500 as compared to Darcy's 30,700. It's a pretty significant uptick. On top of that, its full ammo damage is also higher than that of the Darcy of 650,000 damage compared to Darcy's 500,000 damage. There's really no comparison at all. The Whisper of the Worm is a better Darcy. Now, Darcy does not have better DPS. It does not have better total ammo damage. It only has more ammo, which is something that might be useful, but nah, not really. Now what's important to consider here is that these stats are for a Whisper of the Worm with the full whispered breathing, with white nail, with the catalyst, everything on it. The versions that you need to reload are going to be a lot less DPS. The versions without the catalyst in general are also going to be a lot worse. So it's very important you get the catalyst because it like adds 60% more damage to your whispered breathing. And of course, if you're landing your headshots, no reload means you keep firing. Outside of that, the biggest downside of this weapon, firstly, is that you have to actually get the weapon through the Whisper mission and also get the catalyst, which does take a little bit of time. And secondly, it is a sniper rifle, meaning that it's a little bit more difficult to use. You have to make sure you're landing those headshots, but in the end, it has 30% more DPS and 30% more total ammo damage than second place, so it is exceptionally worth it. And that's going to be pretty much it for the top 5 for you guys today. Moving on to the spreadsheet section of the video, inarguably probably the most important parts of the video, but hopefully you watched the rest of the video because I worked very hard on it. But this is the spreadsheet. You can see on screen now that literally what I consider to be the one-stop shop for everything you need to know about these weapons. Literally from the general information about weapons, like how to get certain exotic weapon quests with links to certain tutorials, what their perks are, perk recommendations for legendary weapons and all of their whatnots, best mod recommendations, extra notes and tips about them, how you get certain catalysts, their effects that they give you, how you complete it. It's all here with their beautiful pictures and notes and information. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's for literally all of the weapons that I was considering for this video, which is 63 weapons. There's a lot of weapons and a lot of things to them. On top of that, there is a full DPS calculation for each one of these weapons. So you can literally see, compared to each other, all of the numbers that I was working with, extra notes, information about what I did for each different thing, about what adjusted RPM is. It's all here, and I absolutely love it. So something you should know as far as the calculations go is that I did them a little bit differently than I have in the past because of the fact that reload is important now. You cannot just use a rally barricade lunafaction rift to get literally no reload time, instant reload. The RPM numbers have changed, and I needed a new adjusted RPM, which incorporates that reload time into the RPM, which made it easier to calculate DPS with that new adjusted reload time. So for example, if we take the Darcy, which has an RPM tooltip of 140, which may not actually be 140, by the way, the tooltip is often wrong, but I use some of them anyways. You have to incorporate the 2-second reload time, which loads in 7 total bullets into its new clip, and you have to somehow average that per bullet across all of the bullets into an adjusted RPM. Now this calculation is a bit more complicated because you have to get the average time it takes to shoot one bullet, the average time it takes to reload each one of these bullets, and then you have to put it back in RPM. And that's a bit nerdy, but all you have to understand is that I've incorporated the reload into the adjusted RPM to get a DPS that cares about reload, which is really cool and really nerdy, and I love it. And of course, like I said, I did this for all of the weapons. Literally all of the weapons that I considered. Not every weapon in the game, but all of the weapons that I considered. You can even see the calculations for the Ikelos and how they stacked up, the different supers and all that whatnot, all the way down. You can see, in general, rockets kind of suck as far as DPS. Like I said, Kali does have an explosion resistance, but I still think that rockets are pretty sucky at this point because reload is really cumbersome for the rockets. And the last thing I wanted to show you is that I made a chart. So if you wanted to visually see how certain weapons perform without really looking at just numbers, I made a bunch of charts for you. You can see literally that the Whisper of the Worm and the last 3 weapons are really much better than the previous weapon. You can see a steady rise across a lot of them, but as soon as you hit Legend of Achra's Darcy, Whisper of the Worm, they start to take off, and then this is obviously Celestial Nighthawk, so ignore that one. On top of that, I also did a total ammo damage chart where you can see Anarchy with its, 1.8 million garbage. There's a lot of damage here, and you can see visually that the swords are also in 2nd place here. The Whisper of the Worm is in like 3rd, 4th place if you consider these 2 different ones. And of course, these are lined up with these same things. So you can see Anarchy is here, and then you can see Anarchy is here, which is really nice. And then finally, I have a combined one in case you wanted to see an logarithmic chart where you can see it goes to like 50,000, 100, and then 1 million if you wanted to see them both in the same chart, and if you cared about that. But that's gonna be pretty much it. That is the end of this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions, any concerns, recommendations. I probably have made some mistakes with these DPS calculations, so let me know in the comments down below if I did and what I did. But that's it. Hope you guys did enjoy. My name is Dychronic, and I will see you guys on the next one.